Hello and welcome to Take 3 with PT. This is a YouTube series where I answer a biblical, practical, theological question. Today's question is it wrong to be angry? And that's a really good question. If you're watching the news, social media, listening to people talk these days, there is a whole lot of anger in the air. It's filled with it. But the question is it wrong to be angry? Let's talk about anger. What is anger? Anger is a feeling, it's an emotional response, but what is it that stirs anger? Typically what stirs anger is a feeling of injustice, a feeling of lack of control, or realizing that you have hurt and you want to push back against that hurt. That feeling in and of itself is not a wrong feeling. There is injustice in the world. You do have limits to your control, and often you get hurt. So your reaction to that as anger is not in and of itself wrong. And I would actually suggest that if you read the scriptures, there is some room for a little bit of righteous anger. The Apostle Paul says, "In your anger, do not sin," in the book of Ephesians. There's also Proverbs about turning away from anger before it becomes destructive. We actually even have a story of Jesus going into the temple and overturning tables with a whip, and it describes his anger there. It's a righteous anger. You realize there's injustice, you realize your limits of control, and you're responding to hurt you feel. Now here's the issue. Not all responses to anger are righteous. A lot of times what happens is we take our feelings and then we try to push those feelings back on others. And so it's easy for us to consider ourselves being righteously angry, but a lot of times we're actually just trying to inflict pain on others or expand our control or have the hurt experienced by the person who hurt us. And that's where your anger becomes sinful. Not all of us are righteous. Not all of us know the best way to solve social problems. And so we can sin in our anger. If you read the book of Psalms, you're going to realize that the Psalms often share deep feelings of hurt, regret, or anger. These are called Psalms of Lament. And there's a particular brand of Psalm of Lament called an imprecatory psalm. One good example of that would be Psalm 137. That is a psalm that is filled with anger, and it's not necessarily righteous anger. If you read it, you'll find it's fairly brutal at the end. What God's doing by allowing a psalm like that in the collection of psalms in the Bible is saying this is a normal, natural human emotion. He's not necessarily saying, I endorse this. What the Psalms, imprecatory psalms, lament psalms show us is that if we have these deep feelings of grief, of regret, of hurt, of pain, what we should do with them is actually direct those toward God and not direct them toward others. So what's the best response to our anger? Don't immediately run into a social justice movement. Don't immediately have a witty word or response or snarky comment back to someone. Don't throw a punch if someone's thrown a punch to you. Take that anger and share it with God.